Good morning. Thank you, Senator Hassan, for co-chairing this working group and roundtable. And I thank Senators Grassley and Wyden, the chair and ranking member, for their support, and the members of the Paid Leave Working Group for participating, along with Senate colleagues and outside experts who are here today, at least WebExing in if they are not physically here. The COVID-19 pandemic is creating many problems for Americans, but particularly burdensome for new parents. Because of COVID-19, exhausted new parents are far less likely to have support from an in-law or a parent to help, who in normal times assist with newborn care, monitor for postpartum health issues, and help the new parents adjust. New parents face tougher decisions than usual on when to send their infant to child care so they can return to work. In the COVID-19 era, paid leave is absolutely essential to protect vulnerable infants, to financially support parents, and to ensure that babies have a healthy start to life. Pre-pandemic, the lack of paid family leave forced 25% of new moms to return to work within 10 days of giving birth. This despite paid parental leave being proven to reduce infant mortality rates, improve infant health, improve child development outcomes, and reduce reliance on public assistance. New parents need help. That's why Senator Kirsten Sinema of Arizona, Representative Colin Allred of Texas, and Representative Elise Stefanik of New York, and I, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, introduced the Advancing Support for Working Families Act, the first bipartisan, bicameral plan to provide Americans with upfront financial assistance in the critical first year after birth or adoption. The Advancing Support for Working Families Act would help working families cover the cost of leave and other expenses associated with the new child by giving parents the option of advancing up to $5,000 from their future child tax credits upon the birth or adoption of a child. And this recognizes that the first year of life is the most expensive year of life. This plan is flexible and provides struggling families with a solution now without raising taxes nor creating new government mandates and not disincentivizing other federal, state, and employer efforts. A number of colleagues here today have proposed plans to provide paid leave to new parents. COVID-19 is exacerbating a problem we all agree needs a solution. This is why there should be a national pilot of paid parental leave. Forcing new parents to choose time off with their newborn versus earning a living is not the right answer, especially not during COVID-19. Ensuring that those ill with COVID-19 can afford to stay home is the best way to slow the spread of COVID-19. The emergency family leave provisions in the Families First Coronavirus Response Act have helped, but may need refining. I look forward to working with colleagues to solve these issues, to bring solutions to American families. And now I ask Senator Hassan if she could make her statement.
Well, thank you, Senator Cassidy, for helping facilitate this important discussion today. I also want to thank members of the Paid Leave Working Group for participating, and Senate Finance Chair Grassley and Ranking Member Wyden for joining this conversation as well. And thank you to our witnesses for being here to speak to this very important issue. As our country grapples with COVID-19, Congress must do more to ensure that workers have the support that they need to not only get back to work, but also to take care of their own health and meet the caregiving needs of their loved ones. In response to this pandemic, Congress acted quickly to address some of the needs of some of our most vulnerable workers. However, since the emergency paid leave provisions enacted COVID-19 relief packages have gone into effect, it has become clear that many workers continue to lack much-needed access to paid leave. For example, under the emergency paid leave provisions, workers may access expanded family leave if their children's schools are closed, but not if their child has been removed from school because of a significant health risk. And employers with more than 500 employees who employ more than 50% of American workers have no obligation to provide paid sick leave under these provisions. We must not allow millions of workers to be left behind. Regardless of personal circumstances, a worker should not have to choose between a paycheck and their own health. This has always been true, But as we work to meet the needs of our current unprecedented circumstances, the urgency to act is greater than ever. As stay-at-home orders are lifted and people are encouraged to go back into the workplace, Congress must provide workers with the opportunity to stay home from work when they are sick and ensure that they have the ability to care for themselves and their families. Doing so will help limit the spread of the virus and keep our communities healthy. Keeping workers, families, and communities healthy is essential to a strong economy. Our country, and this Congress should, at this moment, finally realize that we cannot separate the health of our workers and the health of our economy. And while the COVID-19 pandemic has had a unique, far-reaching impact, long before this crisis began, families across our country have been forced to make gut-wrenching decisions about their own health and their families' well-being because they did not have access to necessary paid leave. If we fail to act at this critical juncture, this unacceptable state of affairs will continue long after this crisis recedes. I hope that we can all learn from this crisis and continue to work together to pass universal paid family, medical, and sick leave to protect workers now and for years to come. Our economy and our country will be stronger for it. Thank you.
And now Senator Grassley.
This is a national concern. Many families, millions of families concerned about this. Iowans are concerned about it, and that's evidenced by Senator, my colleagues' work on it, working so hard on it. Just over a year ago, I announced the formation of a bipartisan finance committee working group with Senator Wyden to consider the issues of family leave policy. This is such an important issue because so many American couples are working outside the home today. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted attentions to the issue of family leave. Before we begin, I thank Senator Cassidy and Senator Hassan for co-chairing this effort and the willingness to tackle a very major issue. I also thank our 4 working group members for their contribution to the family leave discussion: Senator Scott, Cortez Masto, Crapo, Casey, Young, and Brown. Our committee's working group has a challenging task to devise a list of family leave principles on which our committee members can reach bipartisan consensus. My hope is that today's roundtable will help the working group reach agreement on several important threshold questions. First, to what extent is parental and family leave already available to American workers in the competitive marketplace? Where do gaps in coverage exist, and what can we learn from jurisdictions that already have expanded their family leave policies to close those gaps? Second, if Congress is to legislate further in this area, what eligibility criteria and wage replacement rate should we use given budget constraints? How expansive should coverage be? And again, what can we learn from the examples of states that already have adopted paid family leave proposals? Finally, is it time for Congress to update the Family and Medical Leave Act to add more workers' protection? If so, what protection should be? Today, we'll hear not just from our Senate colleagues, but also from several outside presenters on these key issues. I welcome all the presenters to today's roundtable and thank them for sharing their expertise with us. I also want to welcome the members of our chamber who have agreed to discuss the competing proposals that they've championed to make paid family leave for more widely available. I look forward to a spirited discussion, and I want to thank Senator Ernst for presenting her views here because this is a very important issue in Iowa, and I compliment her for working on it. I yield.
And now Senator Wyden by WebEx.
Senator Cassidy and Senator Hassan, thank you both for leading this effort, and to Chairman Grassley, good to be partnering with you. And let me see, because my colleagues have, I think, laid a good foundation, if I can just make a couple of points and then we'll go to all our participants. First of all, it seems to me that the coronavirus has hammered home, literally and figuratively, why paid leave is so urgently needed. What we are hearing from at home and from our colleagues when we're here in Washington is that families are being forced to make choices that really don't come close to meeting their family's needs. They shouldn't be forced to choose between being in a position to be healthy or getting a paycheck. We've got to have these essential paid leave benefits. And let me kind of walk through a little bit why. I support what Senators Gillibrand and Murray did to try to help close the gaps during the COVID-19 pandemic. I thought that made a lot of sense. I'm supportive of what they're doing. What we learn, though, every single day is that this is about financial security. It's not just about healthcare. For example, late last night, a new poll came out. My finance colleagues would be interested in this, showing that 75% of Americans support our supercharged unemployment benefits, the $600 extra per week each week that are getting ready to run out at the end of July. 75% and 67% of Republicans support it. So that is one valuable tool in terms of trying to help people who are walking on an economic tightrope. But I think we have to understand as we go into this, particularly with those on the Finance Committee, those unemployment benefits backed by the country, supercharged, cannot ever be seen as a replacement for guaranteed paid sick days and paid leave at the federal level. What we're going to have to do, if we're really going to respond to the needs of millions of Americans who are walking on an economic tightrope, every day balancing the rent bill against the fuel bill, and the fuel bill against some other essential expense, is we're going to have a suite of programs, a kind of array of programs that are going to be tools that give working people the opportunity to really become middle class. I mean, that's really how most working people dream today. They'd like to be middle class. They believe in work. I see my friend Senator Brown here, who talks passionately about the dignity of work. They want to work, but without paid leave, family and sick days, too often they get put in these choices when they're not in a position to be healthy or take care of their families. We can do better than this. So I see Senator Gillibrand just has joined us. I mentioned the good work that you, Senator, did with Senator Murray to try to close the gaps in the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're having these discussions led by Senator Cassidy, Senator Hassan, because we know we can do better, and I'm prepared to work with my colleagues to actually get it done.
Thank you, Senator Wyden. Now, Senator Brown.
Thank you, Senator Cassidy and Senator Hassan and Senators Wyden and Grassley for this. This is so important. I'm so thrilled that we're all taking this so seriously finally. And Senator Wyden, thank you for your comments about unemployment insurance and the dignity of work and how important that is. This pandemic has been the great revealer. It's revealed to all of Americans the insidiousness of racial disparities. and the evils of structural racism. It's also revealed much to our country about our workplace. I spoke to a grocery store worker in Cincinnati a few weeks back who said to me, she said, "They tell me I'm essential, but I feel expendable." Worker health is public health. President Trump wants us to go back to the same old business as usual, forcing people back to work with no protections and with the same low wages. We know people who are going back to work when they're sick. They are more likely to spread the virus again because millions of Americans will have, as we know, still have no paid sick leave. We know that child care issues this pandemic is calling. Daycare could be a source of spread, so many of them are staying closed while businesses reopen. It puts parents and caregivers in impossible situations, as all my colleagues have pointed out. Grandparent Amy said to me, "I'm a single grandparent raising 4 kids. I work part-time at a pharmacy with only two pandemic certified daycares in our county. When the school shut down, the daycare centers quickly become overcrowded." She writes, she continues, "I was forced by my company to take an unpaid leave to take care of them. They said no. Children are not a COVID related excuse to take time off work. I've not been compensated for lost wages." Far too many people in all of our states, in Louisiana and New Hampshire and Iowa and Oregon, have faced that. Workers shouldn't have to choose between staying home to take care of their health or their family and getting a paycheck. Many of us work hard to make sure the Family First Coronavirus Response Act included provisions on paid sick days and paid family and medical leave. We passed that bill. Congress showed that there's bipartisan support for paid leave policies, as today's hearing indicates, that will keep our workers and our communities safe. But those provisions don't apply to workers at companies with more than 500 employees, and small businesses can be exempted too. That means, as we know, millions of workers still don't have any paid leave benefits, even as they're being forced to choose between unsafe workplaces and paychecks in the middle of a pandemic. And after those provisions expire at the end of the year, what we did pass disappears, and there won't be any federal requirement for employers to provide paid leave. Senator Murray's bill, the Paid Leave Act, would build off existing policy and establish permanent requirements for paid sick days and paid family and medical leave, including when there's another public health emergency. We don't know that this will be over by January 2021. We know this won't be our last pandemic. We know that controlling the spread of COVID in the workplace is critical to fighting the virus. We could all agree, regardless of whether we're in a pandemic, there's no dignity in a job where you're forced to choose between you and your family's health and a paycheck. That's why we need to pass comprehensive paid leave legislation. I urge my colleagues to work with Senator Murray and Senator Gillibrand and me to pass the Paid Leave Act. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would like to thank Senator Grassley, Chairman Grassley, and Ranking Member Wyden, as well as you, Senator Cassidy, and Senator Hassan, for the chance to join a discussion on an issue that is truly a priority for me. And that, of course, is paid parental leave. And I come to this issue as a mom and who has a sweet daughter. Raising a new baby like my sweet Libby Lou during those first few weeks of life was thrilling and exhausting. But every moment spent changing her diaper and feeding her and getting to witness her first smile were well worth it. I believe the first few months following a birth or adoption are critical for healthy child development and bonding between a parent or parents and their new child. This is why I've been working with my colleague, Senator Mike Lee, on a proposal offering paid parental leave to all new parents, moms and dads, natural and adoptive. Our proposal, the Cradle Act, would allow parents to voluntarily receive 1, 2, or 3 months of paid leave benefits by delaying their retirement by 2, 4, or 6 months. Benefit levels would be more generous to lower income families who need our help the most. The Cradle Act offers a paid parental leave solution without government mandates, without increasing taxes on individuals or businesses, and without adding to our national debt. Once individuals who choose to take part in the program begin to delay their retirement for a short period of time, the program would use funds provided on the front end to repay the general revenue fund, ensuring taxpayers are not left on the hook. I think what sets our approach apart is that it gives parents greater flexibility without imposing a heavy-handed new government mandate. We all recognize that this COVID-19 pandemic has caused significant challenges for American families: health risks, financial insecurity, school and daycare closures, etc. My approach with Senator Lee is a win-win for families seeking relief and for small businesses who are struggling right now. Finally, I want to say that we cannot have a conversation about paid parental leave without having a conversation about childcare. Iowa has for years now had a growing childcare crisis that has only worsened since the pandemic started. It's the reason I've worked with many of you in this room on bills to address these challenges. Our economy cannot truly reopen unless working moms and dads know that their children are able to be in a safe environment. I recognize that we all bring a lot of solutions to the table, and the most important reason I'm here today is to be part of a solution. It is long overdue that our nation modernize family leave policies and remove barriers preventing parents from balancing work and raising a family. Countless working moms and dads in Iowa and across the country face insurmountable hurdles in taking time off to bond with and care for their new child. I look forward to working with you in a bipartisan manner to come to the aid of our working moms and dads by providing comprehensive paid parental leave solutions. Families across the nation are counting on us, and I believe that we should respond swiftly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Ernst. Now, Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Senator Cassidy and Senator Hassan, for inviting me to be part of this excellent hearing. We know that 8 in 10 workers in this country have no paid family leave. 6 in 10 have no medical leave. They are forced to make impossible choices between their families and their jobs that leave them and the economy in jeopardy. The Family Act would change that. It would create a comprehensive national program that provides 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave, during which a worker could earn 66% of their wages, all for the cost of less than a cup of coffee a week. That is the kind of program that could actually transform this country. The legislation is based on successful programs in states like California, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and my home state of New York. Employers and employees in those states and others using this model have already benefited, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. A study from the Urban Institute found that California and Rhode Island's paid leave programs made it possible for workers to access benefits while a federal response was still being debated. And because those programs were already funded, employers didn't have to front the costs while waiting for federal reimbursements. If we'd had a national paid family and medical leave program in place, we could have quickly adjusted the funding and terms of that program to respond to the crisis and to contain the virus's spread by enabling sick people to stay home, parents to stay with kids, and to get better. Now, as states and businesses reopen, the risk of COVID remains. Until we have a vaccine, ensuring sick people can afford to stay home is still the best way to slow the spread of COVID and reduce demand on our healthcare system. Our COVID relief package made some progress in extending paid leave, but loopholes left 75% of workers out. We have to do better. The House-passed HEROES Act would close those loopholes and provide a measure of security as parents struggle with children home from school and home from daycare. This crisis has also shown us why only offering paid leave benefits to new parents is not nearly enough. Even before COVID 75% of people using unpaid FMLA did so for non-new baby related reasons. Universal paid leave would also level the playing field for large and small businesses competing for the same employees. In 2018, 1 in 4 workers at large companies were offered paid family leave. At small businesses, it was only 1 in 10. We must extend emergency leave through 2021 and expand it to cover all workers and all FMLA reasons. And we must simultaneously develop a permanent national paid leave program. COVID has put a magnifying glass on what working families in big states and small states, conservative communities and liberal ones, they have all known for long. Forcing people to choose between their families and a paycheck is wrong for our families. It's wrong for our economy, and it's wrong for our country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rubio.
Thank you. Thank you, Senators Cassidy and Hassan, for hosting this event and for inviting me to speak today. I think this is a pretty interesting issue. 5 years ago, it was really sort of a one-sided issue and was not getting a lot of attention. And I think one of the great developments in American politics over the last 5 years is the growing recognition across society and both political parties that the issue of paid parental leave is one that needs to be addressed, that it will not simply and solely be addressed by market conditions. It also is one, I think, that reflects a reality, and that is that the most important institution in all of society is the family. It's the first school that any child will attend. It's the first government that any of us will live under, and it is the place where you learn the values and the examples that allow you to thrive and become a successful person. And so it behooves us as a nation to make it, to do everything we can to be pro-parent and pro-parenting. And one of the challenges that people face, of course, is that in times in which they need to be with their children, it may not be financially possible. The irony of paid leave is the less you actually need it, the more likely you are to have it. And those who could most benefit from it are the least likely to have this benefit provided from their employer. And so I, along with others, have spent a number of years now trying to find a way forward that doesn't grow the national debt, doesn't create burdens on the private sector hiring, but addresses this challenge. And since then, we have seen a number of proposals, including the bipartisan one from the Chairman, Senator Cassidy, and Senator Sinema, that's out there. So this is important. I think in the era now of this post-pandemic era in which so much of our economy has been disrupted, but I would argue that some of it has been permanently changed, and a lot of it negatively, but there will be some reinvention that will happen as a result of some of the things we have learned in our learning, that there might be unique opportunities within that to begin to explore things we can begin to test and try to see how they work. So, and I know that there's been an effort, for example, to potentially get some sort of a pilot program going in this next round, and it's one I'm interested to hear more about. But I'm just glad you called this forum, because I hope the message that it sends is that there is growing bipartisan recognition and support for the idea that this issue is one that we need to confront. It's a 21st century issue that impacts millions of Americans, and one that I hope that we can actually get a result for the American people that addresses this challenge without unintended and unanticipated consequences. So again, I just thank you for the opportunity to speak about it. I encourage everyone to review our New Parents Act that I filed with Senator Romney. It is similar to the Cassidy-Sinema proposal, which uses the child tax credit, but we both try to get at providing generous and flexible parental leave at no budgetary cost. So again, thank you for the chance to address this, and thank you for holding this hearing.
Thank you, Senator Rubio. And now our first witness, which will be Adrian Schwer, who's the leader of the Bipartisan Policy Center's Paid Family Leave Task Force. Ms. Schwer? And we'll be
behalf of the
Go ahead.
On behalf of the team of the Bipartisan Policy Center, thank you, Senator Cassidy and Senator Hassan, as well as Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Wyden, and all the members of the committee for today's roundtable discussion. I am particularly grateful to Senator Cassidy and Hassan for founding and leading this important working group over the last year, and must compliment your hardworking staff, Katie, Brittany, and Evelyn, who've done a great job. My name is Adrian Schwer, and I am a fellow at the Bipartisan Policy Center, a Washington Washington, D.C.-based think tank that actively fosters bipartisanship by combining the best ideas of both parties. Paid family leave enjoys broad bipartisan support across the country and here in Congress. Within the last year, bold bipartisan legislation has been passed into law, providing federal employees with paid parental leave and millions of Americans with paid sick and paid family leave benefits during this COVID-19 pandemic. The emergency family provisions and the Families First Coronavirus Response Act have gone a long way to help workers, but many were left behind. As the economy reopens, working families are facing unprecedented challenges balancing work and caregiving responsibilities, and BPC recommends that Congress make 3 changes to these temporary emergency leave provisions to meet the needs of more workers and more employers. First, remove the 500 employee cap. Second, expand paid family caregiving leave to new parents and parents of adult dependents, and authorize an extension to cover a second wave of the pandemic, which many experts anticipate coming. Congress correctly recognized the need for these policies, and I want to share that they're working. In a recent survey that the Bipartisan Policy put forward, a strong plurality of smaller and mid-sized employers, those with 21 to 500 employees, say that these family first benefits are helping their business. Expanding these programs should be a national economic priority because to regain our bounding economy, we need these sideline workers to return to work safely. A recent study that we put forward revealed that Americans are looking to Congress to help accomplish this through pragmatic solutions that are tethered to employment, and they rank paid family leave near the top of the list of things they need. American consumers are also showing preference for paid family and sick leave, saying they'll patron companies that have these benefits. One thing I'd love to point out is that these emergency family caregiving leave covers time off for parents like me with children out of school or without childcare, but many families are left unmet. Welcoming a new baby has never been scarier, and the journey doesn't end with a healthy delivery or adoption. They return home to more stress and more fear and constrained, unsettling environments with little options for childcare. Paid parental leave has proven to reduce infant mortality rates, improve infant health and development outcomes, and reduce reliance on public assistance. In a COVID-19 era, we must provide paid parental leave to these vulnerable infants and support their uniquely stressed parents. But parental leave is not the only thing left out of the emergency policy. So is a lot of family caregiving for adult dependents. It's critical that we look at these caregivers helping the most vulnerable members of their society and cover leave for more people. Lastly, the nature and course of the viral pandemic is still unknown, but many experts predict a late fall and early winter second rise of the virus. To avoid political delays and operational disruption, we recommend extending provisions through June of 2021, meeting the needs of more people as we experience a second wave. In conclusion, extending temporary paid sick and paid family leave programs to more workers and then their employers will help restart the American economy and be good for families. Thank you for having us today.
Thank you. Our next witness is Ms. Moritsugu, who's the Vice President for Economic Justice at the National Partnership for Women and Families.
Thank you. Thank you, Co-Chair Cassidy and Co-Chair Hassan, and of course, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Wyden, and the members of the working group. I'm Erica Moritsugu with the National Partnership for Women and Families. We are a founding member of the new Paid Leave for All campaign, working to enact meaningful, comprehensive, and universal paid family and medical leave. The National Partnership has been working on paid leave and paid sick days for decades. We're proud to have been the leader of the campaign to pass the Family Medical Leave Act in 1993, and we've been working to expand access to paid leave in the years since. Our nation has long faced a paid leave crisis, and COVID-19 has made clear the importance of paid leave and paid sick days. The COVID crisis has made it clear that too many working people face impossible choices between their health and the health of their families, their job or paycheck. And it's made more clear that paid leave policies must include all caregiving needs, including caring for a new child, a loved one, or one's own serious health needs. Importantly, paid sick days and paid medical leave are proven to help stop community spread of contagious diseases. A recent study found that the general flu rate in places with paid sick days decreased by 5.5% to 6.5% after those protections went into effect. But 32 million U.S. workers don't have access to a single paid sick day, and only 40% have access to longer-term medical leave through their employer. The situation is worse for people of color and low-wage workers. Nearly half of Latinx workers and more than 1/3 of Black workers report having no paid time away from work of any kind, and 7 out of 10 of the lowest income workers lack paid sick days. Essential workers, who are disproportionately women and people of color, are often the least likely to have paid sick days or paid leave to begin with. In fact, more than 1 in 10 essential workers say they still would go to work if they had a fever. The recipe for a continuing disaster as businesses reopen across the country. I want to thank the members of this working group for passing the Families First Act, which established a national emergency paid sick and paid child care leave. However, the exclusions in the law leave out many workers, making it cumbersome for employers and employees to know if they're eligible and for what purposes. The Center for American Progress found that up to 106 million workers could be denied this benefit. This pandemic has demonstrated the vulnerabilities in our society that exist due to a lack of a robust public health infrastructure. As the Congress looks beyond this crisis and develops policies to manage future pandemics, ensuring that all workers can take time off when they're sick or to care for a sick family member is critical to curbing the spread of the pandemics and viruses alike. To protect people today, Congress must close the gaps in the emergency leave law. And as we look ahead to life beyond the pandemic, Congress must enact permanent paid sick days and family and medical leave. In closing, we can't forget how devastating this crisis has been for the countless people around the country who have lost their lives or lost loved ones. But with your leadership, your bipartisan leadership, we can hope that they never again have to make the impossible choice between the jobs they need to survive and the health of themselves and their loved ones. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. And now, Ms. Lucas, representing the Independent Women's Forum.
Thank you very much for having me today. I'm Carrie Lucas, president of Independent Women's Forum. Independent Women's Forum is a nonprofit organization dedicated to developing and advancing policies that aren't just well-intended, but that actually enhance people's freedoms, opportunity, and well-being. Paid leave policies have long been a top priority for IWF, both as a matter of public policy and as an issue that impacts us all personally as an employer. IWF employs 24 employees, many of whom are moms and family caregivers. And like every employer this spring, IWF faced employees with big challenges and the need for leave time in the aftermath of COVID-19. But leave is also an issue that comes up regularly. I have 2 employees on maternity leave right now, and I know that this impacts not just employees, but also an employer's bottom line. Americans overwhelmingly agree that it is important for workers to be able to stay home when they're sick and need to care for loved ones. And the pandemic reminded us that we're tied together. Decisions made about whether to stay home don't just impact individual families and businesses, but have implications for communities and our healthcare system. Yet the coronavirus also showed us that we need workplaces that are flexible and innovative. Policies and benefits that are needed for some workers aren't necessary or appropriate for others. Sweeping government policies that dictate precise employee benefits can discourage the development of win-win relationships between employers and employees and ultimately leave workers worse off. Undoubtedly, proponents of new government paid leave entitlement mandates or programs hope to help women and low-income workers, but experience shows again and again that in fact it is women and low-income workers who end up paying the largest cost in terms of lost opportunities and lost income from these government interventions. That's why as we look forward, the top priorities should be, number 1, to create an environment and economy that gives people the opportunity to find work that meet their unique needs. It hasn't really been mentioned, but there are millions of people who lost their jobs in the wake of COVID-19, and for them, getting employment is just as important as having paid time off. We need to encourage employers to provide paid leave benefits voluntarily. Before COVID-19, employers were increasingly offering paid leave benefits to workers, and we need to get that trend back on track. We need to focus government support on those who need it most, especially low-income workers who are least likely to have employer-based paid leave benefits. And we need to make it easier for employers to prepare for time away from work by facilitating savings and allowing people to bank comp time. And then we should develop new options, such as allowing people to front-load tax credits or access a share of future retirement benefits when they need to take time off from work. Everyone agrees that workers need to be able to take time off from work when they are ill or need to care for loved ones. The question is, how best can we provide this support without destroying true job flexibility and without taking away employment opportunities from women and low-income workers? We can find solutions by keeping these principles in mind. Thank you again for including me today.
Thank you, Ms. Lucas. And first will be Senator Young, who's got a hard stop at 15 till, so line you up first.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm so grateful we're having this hearing. There is no substitute whatsoever for the role a parent can play in a newborn child's life. I happen to benefit from having grown up in a strong atmosphere. We were a stable middle-class family. I know it's fashionable when you're in elective office to compete over who grew up in the smallest log cabin. But I would like to bring to all other Americans the opportunity to ensure that they have a mother or a father, as the case may be, during those earliest stages of life, who is able to spend time with that child. And we need to come up with a model, as I see it, that is flexible enough to accommodate the varying needs of different types of businesses, and also flexible enough to accommodate the differences across different geographies, knowing that many states have already addressed this. COVID-19 has already greatly impacted our economy, impacted our businesses in a significant way. And so many of our businesses, I know because I've heard from them, cannot afford mandates. And they're going to need time and resources to recover from this let's hope once in a lifetime pandemic. The proposal I have drafted in short and introduced last summer is particularly relevant right now. It's called the Support Working Families Act. There are two features I'd like to highlight. Number one, it allows new parents, any working new parent in America, to access a short-term loan capped at $6,000 from future tax credits, like the child tax credit or the earned income tax credit, without placing unworkable mandates on employers and taxpayers. So no unworkable mandates on employers or taxpayers. And then the second component, the second feature, if you will, is this proposal doesn't crowd out existing programs offered by employers or existing state programs. Rather, it fills in the gaps that need to be filled in. So I know many of my colleagues have introduced thoughtful proposals that differ from my own. I believe that this is a creative and realistic proposal, one that frankly can achieve a measure of consensus across party lines and different philosophies. And it's a way to address the immediate needs of working families while protecting our businesses during this difficult time. So thank you for the opportunity to make a statement here. Would it be okay with our two chairs if I ask some questions of the witnesses, or? You have 4 seconds left. Okay, all right. Well, I have no time to yield back, so. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you. Let me just say thank you to Senator Cassidy, Senator Hassan, and Grassley and Wyden for having this discussion today. It is so relevant and important. I thank you to all the panelists. Let me just say, I'm from Nevada, and I will tell you, in Nevada, even unpaid leave under the Federal and Medical Leave Act is inaccessible for 63% of working people. As you know, we are a hospitality-based industry. In Nevada, there's a 12 percentage point gap in labor force participation between men and women, in part because the United States lacks that family-friendly policies. I also know nationally, if women participated in the U.S. labor force at the same rate as women in countries with paid leave, our economy would benefit from more than $500 billion in additional economic activity each year. So let me ask you this, because this is a topic of discussion in my state. There are many of our hotels and casinos that actually have implemented paid family leave and are spearheading this, but there's more work that needs to be done, as we can all see. So, and I guess let me just ask this question to all the panelists. How would a national paid leave policy help workers with non-traditional work schedules? And in Nevada, because we are 24/7, you've got to remember, we have people working day shifts, swing shifts, and graveyard shifts. So for those individuals, how do we, and that's 24/7, and it's happening all the time. And a lot of the women are the ones that are working the swing shifts and the graveyard shifts. So talk to me, if you would, ideas about how we address that leave policy for those workers as well.
Yeah, Senator, if I may, first of all, thank you for your leadership in calling for expanded paid leave protections for disabled individuals in the next COVID package. But in response to your question, a national paid leave policy that's modeled off of the state should and would cover all workers, including those with non-traditional work schedules. Benefits under those models are dispersed based on average earnings. So part-time and non-traditional workers would still have access to benefits. This is particularly important for the workers in the industries that you just mentioned. In Nevada, these are more likely to be people of color and less likely to have access to employer-sponsored paid leave. And in Nevada, these folks include my classmates and cousins who moved from Hawaii to Clark County for job opportunities and to raise their families. A national paid sick day policy would also help part-time workers and workers with non-traditional schedules. Like the state and local policies, the Healthy Families Act, which you co-sponsored, would set up an accrual process so that all workers would have the ability to accrue earned sick leave.
Thank you. Go ahead, please, Carrie. Oh, I cannot hear you. I don't know if I think you have your mute on.
Okay.
Better.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I just want to caution that I think it is important to look at the experience of the states. 21% of all workers are in states with these with programs that are supposed to provide them benefits already, and obviously those states are still struggling. And one thing that's I think particularly kind of counterintuitive is just the distributional impacts of who takes benefits in a place like California or in Rhode Island. And what you'll find is consistently that it is higher income individuals who are receiving benefits compared to lower income individuals who are paying into it. In 2017, 42% of workers paying into the program made $20,000, but only 19% of beneficiaries were from this low income group. This is actually consistent in the EU. There's often a problem where these end up being, it's been referred to as a transfer payment from poorer workers to high income workers. So I just want to caution that the states really show us that if you're taxing people and imposing a payroll tax on people, that on that first dollar, it often ends up that it is low income workers who end up paying in but not receiving benefits, and their situation is worse off.
Senator Cortez Masto, we need to move on.
Yes, thank you. I noticed my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Casey, are you still on? Yes, no. I guess not. Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Urban Institute data has shown that state paid family and medical leave programs helped a surge of workers affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. In California, family caregiver claims, including when the parent doesn't have access to childcare, jumped by 43% in March. In Rhode Island, they tripled from February to March. This data demonstrates clearly that by having an established paid family and medical leave program, the programs could be retooled quickly so that working families were able to get responsive access to help. Do you agree that a national program that covers the entirety of caregiving needs would have provided our country a strong foundation to help these working families respond quickly to the pandemic, saving lives and mitigating the economic pain and uncertainty these families face? This is to each person. Erica, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much. The answer, yes. When families are facing a health or caregiving crisis, the last thing they need is additional uncertainty about whether they're going to be able to pay their bill. A well-designed national paid family and medical leave program like the one you've introduced could have helped workers quickly and efficiently, providing peace of mind and support and confidence. And as you said, it must cover all types of caregiving needs and all types of caregivers. New parents, caregivers for dependents and elders, in addition to needing to care for one's own serious health, especially as we now know in these times in the crisis. And we want to apply it beyond the so-called traditional nuclear family household that actually isn't and hasn't been the norm for most families, not in communities of color, not for military families or veterans or rural or where extended family and chosen family are the ones providing care. So while the emergency leave provided with employers has been a lifeline to workers who are covered, and thank you for that, we can all agree that asking employers to operate as a middleman to provide wage replacement benefits has not been an ideal solution. And so we can learn from the experience of communities, individuals now, to hopefully enact a national permanent policy.
Adrian?
Thank you for your thoughtful question. I think it's a really important one, and deeply understanding what's happening in the states right now is a challenge facing the academics and the economists that study these policies, and much more needs to be done. The Urban Institute data is monumental in its reflection of what's happening, and I'm really excited and hopeful that we'll be able to dig more deeply into what's happening in the states with existing policies. I agree that the temporary solution, which is really important, and I'm so grateful for both the bipartisanship and the swift movement of Congress to bring these policies to people, is not a permanent solution. But I do think that we need to study what's happening in these emergency policies and how people are using them and the impact they're having, and what's happening in the states during this pandemic to understand and help design future policy.
Let me just follow up on that to Erica.
Excuse me, Senator Gillibrand, I'm sorry. We have to move on.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Hassan?
Well, thank you, Senator Cassidy. I have two questions. The first to Ms. Mortsugu. We are in the middle of a pandemic, and as we continue to grapple with COVID-19 and what that means for workers, I'd like to start by talking about paid sick leave and the unique public health implications when workers do not have access to paid sick days. Before COVID-19, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that less than 50% of the lowest quadrant of private sector wage earners had access to paid sick days, compared with 93% of the top decile of workers. These workers are often living paycheck to paycheck, making the choice to stay home without pay when they are sick untenable. Ms. Mortsugu, recognizing that Congress made important strides to address this, can you explain why further expanding paid sick leave access, particularly for lower wage workers, and addressing the broad employer exclusions in the Family First Act from the expanded paid sick leave is so important, especially during COVID-19, to help slow the spread of the virus? And I'll ask you to be relatively brief because I have one more question.
For sure. Senator, thank you. So a single worker going to work can easily spread the coronavirus to dozens of coworkers in a single shift. But more than 1 in 10 essential workers and nearly 1 in 5 of the lowest paid essential workers say that they would still go to work on a day that they woke up with a fever. So it's beyond troubling that at least 68 million workers are not covered by the emergency leave policy because they work at large employers, and millions more may not be eligible because they work for small employers or are exempted as emergency responders, healthcare providers, and others. So we know that guaranteeing all workers access to paid sick leave reduces the spread of infectious diseases such as the flu by 5 to 6% in general and up to 40% during a major wave. So absolutely, paid sick days and paid leave must be a basic universal protection for workers and for all of our health as a community.
Thank you. And to Ms. Schweer, one of my priorities in working on paid leave policy has been to ensure that families have access to caregiving leave. I'm happy that Congress expanded paid family leave to parents whose children's schools have closed, but I remain concerned about families who are facing new caregiving demands due to COVID-19 and may not be able to access the leave that they need. I'm particularly concerned about individuals who experience disabilities and older Americans who receive long-term care at home and services that may have been disrupted during this crisis, leaving family members to fill those needs. So, Ms. Schweer, can you explain some of the unique caregiving demands that many families are facing right now and how Congress may work to address those in future COVID-19 relief packages? And I know we are almost out of time, so again, a brief answer, and then we can follow up with you later.
Senator Hassan, thank you for that really thoughtful and important question. I will elevate one statistic that just came out a few days ago that has shocked me, and as a parent whose children are out of school and who really appreciates the work that Congress did to address that in this situation, 45% of voters say that they are caring for a loved one right now in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. And while 25%, a quarter of those people are caring for children out of school, the vast majority are caring for an adult dependent, an aging loved one, a loved one with a disability, or a loved one with a serious mental or physical illness. That's new data. That's raw data. That's what's happening right now. And I think it's important for us to dig down into that and figure out what we can do to help support these workers and these families.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator Cassidy.
Thank you. We're almost through. I will combine my questions with my closing statement, and then Senator Hassan will completely close. First, let's kind of clear up something for the record. The Families First Coronavirus Response Act did not include those with employers with over 500 employees because they typically already provide it, but if they had been included, they would have been eligible for a tax credit, and that would have ballooned the note. So I think there has to be kind of a, let's just kind of really look at the lay of the land. And I enjoyed each of your testimony, but Ms. Lucas, I really enjoyed yours, Ms. Lucas, because it kind of brought home that ill-considered policies punish low-wage workers. The Robin Hood in reverse, not just in Rhode Island, but elsewhere, was quite remarkable. Any comments on the impact of policies that, again, disproportionately funded by the less well-off to benefit the, I think you put it in one place, the leisure time of the better well-off? Not to minimize it, but I'm just trying to quote you. Ms. Lucas? Ms. Lucas, did I lose you?
Apologies. You're absolutely right. It is important as we're talking about who we should be focused on providing support for, rather than having a massive new entitlement program that would have impact and change the employment contract of every single working American, including those who already are covered by state law and have state paid leave, or have benefit packages that they enjoy on their own, or that are self-employed. There's a lot of people who do not want to be put into a federal system. Why don't we focus on those people who actually do need it, who are low-income workers, instead of imposing a new payroll tax on them? And you're right that I just want to quickly mention that it's not only low-income workers, but women lose a tremendous amount of opportunities when we do create sweeping new paid leave laws. And you can see that in the EU, where women are much less likely to be closing the wage gap or moving up. Women are almost half as likely to be professionals and to be in executive positions in the EU than they are in the United States, in part because there are these incredibly long leave times. There is a cost to pay.
So you're suggesting a bias against employing somebody who is potentially fertile because of the paid leave that would be required.
Absolutely. We see that over and over again. And women know that flexibility needs to be flexible, not just a one-size-fits-all package that's imposed on us by the government.
Well, I'll finish with my statement because Kirsten Sinema and I are sponsoring the paid leave bill that would allow parents to pull forward their paid their child tax credit so that they can concentrate it in the first year of life should they choose. And this would benefit women of all incomes. It would be optional. You don't have to do it, but if you choose to do it, you can do it, and it wouldn't crowd out a non-government program, if you will. Because I think, again, Ms. Lucas, you made the point regarding ill-considered public programs will merely crowd out private programs that already exist. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. You can see this happening in some companies where they're state workers, they just roll back what the private programs they've offered in states like California, and have their employees take those benefits before they can access their company's benefits. So there would be a tremendous move from the private sector to putting it on the backs of taxpayers. And as we know, if it's going to be a payroll tax, it's often low-income taxpayers.
Well, I appreciate that input. I, of course, with Senator Sinema, have our proposal. It is bicameral and bipartisan, and it is something which would not crowd out and would not raise payroll taxes and does not have mandates. But I'm most encouraged, and this will be my final statement, that we have common ground between Republicans and Democrats in trying to find a solution which is so important to so many families. And with that, I will turn to my colleague for her closing statement.
Well, thank you, Senator Cassidy, and thank you to all of our witnesses today, and to everyone who joined this important conversation, and to those who watched remotely and submitted or plan to submit comments. I look forward to working together to address many of the issues we've discussed today so that workers all across the country, whatever the nature of their work is, wherever they are on the income scale, have access to the paid leave that they need. Our families and our economy will be stronger for it. Thank you.
And this is, I guess, do we have opening statements? I mean, do we have anything, questions for the records that can be submitted?
No.
This ends. Thanks for all the witnesses. Thanks for all the participants. And I thank my colleague for a really positive meeting.